This is Jeremy Drebinstead with Demco Products. Today we are going to go over the installation of Demco's battery disconnect, part number 6338. The vehicle we will be installing this on is a 2019 GMC Sierra, so the installation will be slightly different on other vehicles. Let's start by taking the battery disconnect out of the box and getting it ready to be installed. Opening the box, you will find the disconnect switch, a mounting bracket, a bag with the mounting hardware, the key for the disconnect, a battery cable, and lastly, a set of instructions. A quick note before we get started. On some vehicles, it will require a second battery cable due to how the battery connection is made. On this 2019 GMC Sierra, you can see on the positive connection that don't use the traditional battery cable. It is more of a direct connection to the vehicle. Since we don't have a cable on the vehicle to help make our connection for the battery disconnect, you will need to purchase an additional cable. You can get one from Demco, part number 16870. Start by placing the disconnect switch inside the slot on the mounting bracket. Open the hardware bag and you will find two Phillips head screws. Slide one of the Phillips head screws through the eyelet of the key cable, then into the hole of the switch and through the bracket. Holding the screw in place with the finger and holding it with one hand, flip over the assembly and screw on one of the nylon lock nuts. You will then slide the remaining Phillips head screw through the switch and bracket assembly and thread on the last nylon lock nut. Using a 10mm deep well socket wrench and a Phillips head screwdriver, you will then tighten down the nuts. Now that we have the battery disconnect assembled and tightened down, let's move over to the towed vehicle and get it installed. An important notice before we install the disconnect switch on the vehicle. When you use a battery disconnect with the Demco Supplemental Braking System, it must be disconnected on the positive side of the battery. If the battery is disconnected on the negative side, it will just reground itself through the Supplemental Braking System wiring. On this GMC Sierra, to access the positive battery port, you will need to remove the cover that's on top of the battery. We will then start by disconnecting the negative battery cable and sending it off to the side. Next, we'll move to the positive side of the battery. GMC does it a little different on the newer models, as you can see. So we will need to remove the nut that makes the positive connection from the battery to the metal plate. We will also remove and set aside the small wire that's attached. Once that's removed, we are going to move to the connection on the positive post on the battery and loosen the nut on it. We will need to remove this from the post, and to do this it can be a little bit tricky. You'll notice on the metal plate it has black tabs every few inches. What you're going to want to do is gently pull them to the side while lightly lifting up on the plate, starting with the ones closest to the post, and work your way out. Then while gently holding up the plate while giving it a little wiggle as you pull up, slide the post connection off the battery. You will need to reposition the battery connector and rotate it around 30 or so degrees counterclockwise. In order for it to fit in this position, you will need to trim a little bit of plastic. This can easily be done by using some diagonal cutting pliers. There is a rectangle piece that sits right in the spot we are looking to rotate our connection to. Simply cut that piece off all the way to the bottom of the plastic box. It may take a couple of snips to get it low enough. You will then slide the connector onto the battery post in the position where it fits into this new slot we made, like seen here. Using a box end wrench, you may now tighten it down until it is secure on the battery post. Next, you will need to find a bolt and nut that fit in the hole on the metal plate. Take the bolt and again gently lift up on the metal plate and slide the bolt into the hole. You can now reattach the small wire to this bolt. Then you grab one of the battery cables and attach it to the same bolt. You will notice that it will lay in the channel that is already in the box. You may now screw on the nut and using a couple wrenches tighten it down. Once it's tightened down, you can lightly push down on the metal plate until it snaps back into the plastic tabs. Next, we will move over to the bar that holds down the battery. On the side closest to the engine, we're going to remove this bolt. This is going to be the spot that we're going to mount our battery disconnect switch to. As you can see, we will need to drill one of the holes a little bigger so the bolt will fit through it. Now, we're not ready to mount the switch just yet. We still need to hook up our cables. So starting with the cable we already have connected, we're going to remove the nut on the post on the switch closest to the battery. Holding it up, attach the cable with the cable running towards the firewall to the post and screw on the nut. Now it helps to angle it off to the side while you tighten it down to allow room for the additional cable we will be installing. Moving on to our last cable, remove the nut on the other post on the switch and attach one end of the cable onto the post. This is where we will want to also attach our positive connection for our supplemental braking system. This will allow power to the braking system while still disconnecting power from the rest of the vehicle. Screw on the nut and tighten it down. We can now mount our disconnect switch onto the location we picked out earlier and tighten the bolt down until it's secure. Once that's mounted, we can route our cable down the other channel inside the box and to our connector on the battery post. We're going to screw on the nut that we removed earlier and tighten it down. It is now safe to reattach the negative battery cable and tighten down the nut. Once that's tightened down, you may now test the disconnect switch by inserting the key and turning it clockwise. You will now have power to the vehicle. Turn the key counterclockwise and remove it, and it will cut the power off to the vehicle. The last thing we will need to do to complete this install is trim some pieces on the cover. This will allow enough space for the cover to close and for the cables to fit in the channels we ran them in. So using some diagonal cutting pliers, trim these pieces here and then test fit the cover.